Hello board game brothers and sisters, I'm Adam Singer and welcome to another episode where I'll be letting you know of all the board games launching on Kickstarter and Gamefound over the next week. If you're new here, we do this every single week, but I do like to start these videos by going over some news and announcements that I just found out about, and I just have one update for you for this week. And that's that there is a new game added to the Point Salad series of games. First they had Point Salad, then they had Point City, and now they have Point Galaxy. And this one's going to be just as easy to play as those previous versions. But of course this one is going to be introducing its own mechanisms and ideas. I haven't had a chance to look into this one too much, but it should be coming to crowdfunding sometime within the next quarter, if not in the first half of the year. No exact date yet, but if you do want to know more about this one, AEG is starting to post more info about it, and you can go ahead and check out its BGG page. I guess I should also mention the Level Up event, since I am wearing my Level Up t-shirt from last year, and this is going to be starting very soon here in New Jersey, so if you are in the area or if you want to make the trip, definitely feel free to find tickets in the description below and find me at the event because I'd be happy to play some games. That's all I got for an intro. I'm going to try and make this video as quick as I can because I do have to be up at 5:30 a.m. tomorrow morning in order to fly to Punta Cana for a fishing trip. I don't do these things often, so naturally I've left all my packing to the last minute, so let's check out the games. In the first campaign we have launches on the 27th, and this one is The Shadows Deep, and this one is a cooperative game where players are playing as vampires trying to take over a city while they're fighting back against vampire hunters. Each player also has their own starting location out on the map where they're going to be keeping their vampire den, and of course the hunters are going to be trying to destroy those in order to try and win the game, because the hunters can win in one of two ways: either they destroy all the dens, or they reach a certain amount of faith points. The players also have their own point system where they're going to be gaining points for doing all sorts of nefarious deeds, and if the players are able to reach a certain threshold before the hunters reach theirs, then the players are going to be the ones to win this game. On a turn, players are going to be drawing 5 cards from their deck, and this is going to be granting you with all sorts of different special abilities. They might allow you to feed on different citizens that are going to be spawning out on the map, which does heal you, and then also turns them into a servant, which you can use to position out on the map, because anytime that a hunter moves into a location with one of your servants, that hunter's movement has to stop. Of course, there's also cards that will allow you to attack those hunters, and if you are able to kill them, then that's going to be gaining you points. And there's always going to be 2 hunters out in play, and they're going to be randomly drawn. And whenever you kill a hunter, you get those points and whatever other benefits, but then you're going to be randomly drawing a new hunter to put in play to replace them. Of course, these cards can have all sorts of other special abilities, but they can also have different icons that you can match together to activate other abilities, like just healing, moving around on the board, creating ghouls, or moving your ghouls, which also function as a sort of servant to the vampires. And you can actually create ghouls without using cards by instead reducing your health. Of course, the cards do also function as a currency where you're going to have to discard them in order to get their point value that you can then spend to buy more cards, which you'll then just put all into your discard pile, and you'll be able to get those out the next time that you shuffle and draw from your deck. The game also provides a bunch of different objectives that players can try to complete for different bonuses, but anytime that you do this, it's going to be increasing the difficulty of the game. Once all the players have had a turn and performed their actions, you're then going to be drawing a card which will activate each of the hunters. And when a hunter wounds a player, you're going to be putting a token out on the board, which is going to be protecting them and any citizens in that location until that token's removed. And you can remove it by discarding 2 cards from your hand when you are in that location. But if 3 of those tokens are ever put on any of the players' dens, then that den is going to be destroyed, increasing the hunter's points. And like I said, if they get too many, you do lose the game. If this one sounds interesting to you, you can go ahead and check it out, and I will have it linked in the description below. And also on the 27th, we have Moonlight, and this one is a solo roll and write where you are going to be playing as a detective that's forced into a life of crime in order to gather enough money to pay a ransom for your missing partner. This is also a game that has an emerging story that you're going to be revealing over several episodes that are also each going to be introducing their own mechanisms and ideas. And I do want to mention that I think this one is really well thought out, and if you are a fan of solo games or roll and writes, you'll definitely want to check this one out because it's also only $5. At the start of that round, you're going to be crossing off a day on your calendar and then rolling 6 dice that you'll then be able to spend to perform various actions. You can discard pairs of dice in order to gain money, or instead you could spend those dice to do things like investigating the city by foot or by car, which will allow you to navigate different grids and collect clues out on your different sheets, and that's going to allow you to increase the skills in the corresponding area, which also make other actions more powerful. With any of the money you're able to gain, you can also spend it for intel, which is an easier way to gather clues from the grid because you can just pick any of the icons out on the grid instead of having to move to them. But also on this grid is going to be a few different heist locations, and if you're able to fully encapsulate a location, then that will allow you to perform that heist. This triggers a little mini game where you're going to be rolling dice and then trying to fill in areas of a grid so that the combination of numbers add up to the value in the lowest row. There's a bunch of provided numbers on the left-hand side that you can feel free to use, but then you can also spend one of your stats in order to roll that many amount of die that you can then also add into your pool of numbers. This is going to give you more options because if you're able to fill up everything within the grid and have all those numbers make sense, then you're going to be getting the associated reward. But any dice that you have remaining after that, you will be penalized for. What's really cool about all this is that once you've completed the heist, you're then going to be moving into the next phase where you're trying to cover your tracks. You'll be able to use any of your unused numbers in order to cross out the same number that you used in the grid, and that's going to allow you to reduce your suspicion with the police. And your suspicion is going to be represented by this police sketch that's going to become more and more uncovered for each of the numbers that you're not able to cross out during one of your heists. And if this image is ever fully completed, then that means you have lost the game. And of course, if you're able to complete the episode before that happens, then you have won the episode, but your decisions, successes, and failures will influence that next episode, so you're not going to be starting with a completely clean slate. But if you are able to get through all the episodes over multiple games and evade the police long enough to find your partner, then I imagine you're going to be starting your new life somewhere where those police can't find you. Of course, at that point, you win the game, and if you do want to learn more about this one, go ahead and check it out, and I will have it in the description down below. And launch on the 28th, we have Trench Crusade, which is an alternative World War I war game, and it is a game that I thought was launching a few months ago, but it got pushed back until now, so I do already have footage for this one, so I'll just go ahead and roll that previous footage for you now. This one is a skirmish war game that's set in an alternate timeline, where players are going to be fighting heaven versus hell. Looks like this one has some really nice artwork, but there's not a whole lot on the campaign page right now, so if this one looks interesting to you, feel free to go ahead and check it out once it launches, because I'm sure there'll be a lot more content here at that point, and you can find a link to the campaign in the description below, and of course click to get notified. Also on the 28th, we have the next campaign from All Play Games, which is going to be introducing 3 different games for you to choose from, and I'll just go through each of these here, with the first one being Twinkle Twinkle, and this one is a drafting tile placement game that uses transparent tiles where players are going to be trying to create different patterns of stars, satellites, asteroids, comets, planets, and black holes in order to score victory points. Something that I really like about this game is that there's a bunch of different scoring tiles that are going to dictate how the different celestial bodies will score, which are going to be changing your objectives from game to game depending on what you're trying to do. What's also really neat about this game is that the tile you draft also determines your player order for the following round, because the draftable tiles are all going to be in a row out on this board, and then as players take turns drafting the tile that they want, they're going to be putting their player token in the same column as the tile that they take, and then the order of all the player tokens at the end of the round is going to be the player order for the following round. As I mentioned, players are going to be scoring victory points at the end of the game based on the different objectives that they're able to complete, but you can also get additional victory points for the longest constellation and the number of constellations that you're able to create. The player with the most victory points after all that wins the game. Next we have Merchants of Andromeda, and this one is a little bit more advanced than a lot of their other small box games, but the way that this game works is that on your turn you're going to be drawing 3 cards, one at a time, and as you're drawing those you're going to be assigning them to either the discard, the keep, or the auction section on the token in front of you. The one you choose to discard is going to be granting you the resource on that card, the one you choose to keep is going to be granting you the action on that card, and the one you choose to auction is going to trigger an auction. This starts a 22-second timer where the seconds remaining also double as the cost of the card, which means that the card's going to get cheaper and cheaper the more time that passes, but whoever calls out the current number of seconds left is going to be instantly the winner of that auction. This means that if you do want that card, you do want to wait as long as you can, but you also want to shout a price before any of the other players. It is really nice to win a card in the auction because you get both the resource and the action on the card. There's a bunch of different actions that those cards can allow you to do. There's an Andromeda action that allows players to place a disc in one of the open sectors in the Andromeda section of the board. Each of these sectors will have their own rewards, and you can also create different patterns to get additional bonuses. The Explore action allows you to flip tiles on the Explore section of the board, which can contain all sorts of different goods, which you can claim for resources, artifacts, which you can collect for sets, or curses, which do come with a negative consequence. The Fight action allows you to roll dice and then move your ships along the board based on what you've rolled, and you're going to be trying to compete for control in different areas because the player with the most ships in each lane is going to be gaining additional rewards throughout the game. The Vote action allows you to place discs into any of the ballot boxes for any of the candidates running for Senate, and the more votes that they receive, the better reward that they're going to be granting for the players that voted for them. Final action is the Goods action, where you can receive all sorts of different goods that help move you up various tracks that will then grant you the bonuses of those tracks. But as players are taking turns drawing 3 cards from the deck, you're also going to be occasionally drawing different event cards, and there's 20 of these in the deck, and they're going to be triggering different effects. But once you've reached that final card, that's going to be triggering the end of the game, which will then move into a scoring phase where players earn points for their progress on all the different boards. The player with the most points wins the game. And the last game we have offered on this campaign is Waddle, and in this game each player is going to be starting with 20 different penguin tokens, but then the board is going to be made up of snow hexes and numbered fishing hole hexes. This is a game that plays over a series of rounds, and each round is going to be focused on one of the watering holes, starting from the lowest number and then moving up to the highest. This game also uses this really cool marble track here, which is used to represent player order, and this is just going to be randomized at the start of the game. But then each round, players are going to be taking turns in this order, and you have 2 options to choose from. You can place a single or double penguin token from your supply into any unoccupied hex adjacent to the current fishing hole, or instead you could choose to pass, which is going to be moving your marble from the current round tracker into the next one, which will move you up in player order for that following round. The end of the round is triggered either when all the hexes around the watering hole are occupied or when all but one player pass, and when that happens, that player is going to be filling up all the remaining spaces around the watering hole, and then players will be moving on to the next round, which would be the next incremental watering hole. After all the rounds are completed, you're then going to be moving into scoring, where you're going to be getting points from 2 different sources. You're first going to be checking all your groups of penguins and scoring based on the size of each of them. And then you're going to be checking each of the different watering holes, and whichever player has the most penguins surrounding it is going to be getting the points of that tile. Player with the most points wins the game, and if you want to check this one out, I will have a link to the campaign in the description below. Also on the 28th, we have Mourne Manor, and this one is a mystery deduction game that takes place in a haunted house, where your host has disappeared suddenly, and players are trying to discover what happened to them and who or what is responsible. Players are going to be playing throughout this game as unique characters, and each round you're going to be gaining new secrets, observations, and suspicions through the eyes of your character. After that, players move into a discussion phase where you're going to be discussing what you've observed with the other players, but keeping any of your own personal secrets to yourself. Players then move into an investigation phase where they can explore different areas of the manor to find different clues and even subtle clues provided by the ghosts that haunt the manor. You're actually going to be starting the game with 10 lit candles, and the ghosts can actually cause different disturbances in the different rooms, such as blowing those candles out. Of course, players are trying to solve the mystery before that last candle gets blown out, and if they're able to do that, they win the game, and you can check this one out in the description down below. Also launching on the 28th, we have D-Day Dice Pacific, and this one is a dice rolling war game during World War II, and I don't go into the war-themed games in as much detail, so if you do want to learn more about this one, definitely go ahead and check out Zilla Blitz's channel in the description down below, because I'm sure he will have you covered on this one because he focuses on war games exclusively. And I wasn't able to look into this one in too much detail before filming the video, but because this one is a dice-centric war game, it does make me think that this is not your traditional war game, and even if you aren't interested in war games, this one might be one worth checking out. If you do want to learn more, I will have a link to the campaign as well as Zilla Blitz's channel in the description down below. This next one is also launching on the 28th, but I couldn't find a whole lot of info on how it plays, but this one's called Granfondo, Tempo, Taktik, Kettenfett, and this one is a trick-taking bicycle racing game where each of the cards are going to have a value, a terrain, and a suit, and the tracks are going to feature mountainous terrains, short sprints and long-distance tests of endurance. Each of the cyclists are going to be specialized in each of these areas, but the cyclists are randomly distributed, which means that you may be more focused on one type of terrain than another. Like I said, I couldn't find a whole lot of info on how this one actually plays, so if you do want to learn more about it, I will have a link in the description, which you can go ahead and check out, and I'm sure they'll have a lot more info on that once this one launches. Also on the 28th, we have the next campaign from Garfield Games, and this one's going to be introducing many expansions for each of the games in the South Tigris Trilogy. I didn't have a chance to look into what all these expansions are actually going to be adding, but if you do want to learn more about the actual expansions, you can find a link to the campaign in the description down below. But if you do want to learn more about each of the 3 games, I did already cover all 3 of them in previous episodes. You can just go ahead and search any of these different games with shelf clutter in the YouTube search. You should be able to find my quick summaries of each of these 3 games. Also on the 28th, we have Aventuria, which is an adventure campaign game, but what's interesting about this one is that it's actually played with cards. Players are going to be choosing a unique hero and then competing for the 7 magical chalices by fighting against wild monsters, villains, and deadly demons. The game offers 10 different adventures which play over about 20 acts, and players are going to be gaining experience points, treasures, companions, and new equipment that they can use to improve their heroes. This is another one that I couldn't find a whole lot of info on, so if you do want to learn more about it, I will have it linked below. And on the 29th, we have Dungeon Map Maker, which is from the same creator that created Fantasy Map Maker, which I did cover previously, and I thought it looked like a ton of fun. This one is a solo game where you're going to be going through a mapping phase, where you're going to be acting as a scribe, mapping out the floor plan of a dungeon, and then you're going to be going through an exploration phase where you're acting as an adventurer, pursuing the main quest as you delve through the dungeon. Unfortunately, I just didn't have enough time to look into this one in too much more detail, but like I said, I did cover their previous Map Maker game, and I thought it looked really, really good, so I'll just go ahead and roll that previous footage for you now, but just keep in mind that this one will probably play a little bit different than that one. This one is actually a roll and write, and it actually looks like quite a lot of fun. And as you might expect, the goal in this game is to draw your own map, but each player is going to have their own set of private objectives that they're going for. And this is going to dictate which sort of features you want in certain configurations. And if you're able to meet those requirements at the end of the game, then you're going to be earning those victory points and hopefully winning the game, but at the very least, you'll have a really cool map. The way this game works is that 2 dice are going to be rolled each and every round, and players are each going to be simultaneously choosing one of those dice to select a region in this circle here, with each of those regions having a selection of different features, and then you're going to be using the other dice's value to put into the circle on one of those features. The value you put there essentially means how many times you're going to be drawing that feature out on your map according to its placement rules. This image has a completed map, but of course when you start, this is going to be completely empty, and any spaces that are empty out on your map are considered unexplored, and in order to explore them, you're going to be wanting to draw your large features out on the map, and the large features are the mountains and forests, and whenever you draw them, you're going to be drawing them along the lines of the grid. An alternative way that you can explore more areas of your map is by drawing out the long features, and these are coastlines, rivers, and roads that are going to be drawn through the rows and columns of the map. But once you've drawn out a portion of your map, you'll then be able to assign dice to the various action spaces that allow you to draw these small features. And these are going to be things like houses, streams, lakes, and islands. You're going to be drawing these anywhere that you have already explored out in your grid. There's also different locations that will let you draw labels out on the map, allowing you to name the various features and locations. But then there's also an action location that allows you to draw various landmarks, and this one is a bit of a special one because each landmark is unique in the game, and it can be different castles, outposts, ruins, and ships, and each of these is going to be associated with their own card. When you perform this action, the value doesn't allow you to draw multiple of these. Instead, you're always going to be drawing one, but it must be in the row or column, matching the value that you assign to that space. Each of these cards will have their own effects and placement rules that you'll have to follow, and they could also score you additional victory points at the end of the game. And finally, the last thing you can draw out on your map are the events, which are drawn anytime that doubles are rolled, and each of the cards are going to be associated with a particular value, and each of these events will have their own effects on your map, and also their own placement rules, just like how the landmarks work. These are going to be all sorts of different features and creatures that will add more variety to your map and possibly a little bit of danger. The game continues like this until you roll 2 dice that you're no longer able to do anything with because you've occupied all those action possibilities. And then your game's going to come to an end and you're going to be adding up your victory points from the map that you drew and the various quests that you're trying to complete. And then the player with the most victory points wins. And if you're interested to check this one out, it does sound really cool, and you can find a link to it in the description down below. And that's everything I got for this week. I'm going to be going on my trip, and then I'll be back for exactly 1 day before I fly back out for the Level Up retreat. I think I did a pretty good job on this video with the limited time, but I don't know how my next one's going to be, but I'll do my best. As I mentioned before, if you do attend the Level Up retreat, definitely feel free to say hello. And like I said, I'm really happy to play any games with anyone that wants to play them. Hope you all have a fantastic week, and until next time, keep that shelf cluttered and the table full.